I still remember the exact weight of that folder when Gerald slid it across the table. Not because it was heavy, because it wasn't. 21 years reduced to maybe a dozen pages, and the whole thing felt lighter than a lunch receipt. My name is Walter Grady. I'm 54 years old. For 2 decades, I was the senior pipeline safety engineer at CoreFlow Energy Systems in Houston. And on a Tuesday morning in February, I sat in a conference room on the 11th floor and watched that career get handed to a 26-year-old who had never spent a single night in the field. But let me back up about 6 hours, because that part matters. It was 2:14 a.m. when my phone went off. Pressure anomaly on Line 7, Segment C, a 40-mile stretch running through 3 counties in East Texas. I was already pulling up the diagnostic dashboard before I got out of bed. That's not discipline. After 21 years, your body just does it. I had 2 field supervisors and a control room operator on a conference call by 2:30. By 3:45, we had isolated the affected segment, rerouted flow through the backup corridor, and confirmed 0 environmental breach, no spill, no headlines. Nobody's Tuesday morning ruined. I was still finishing the incident report at 6:15 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Nadine Whitfield, Gerald's daughter. She had the title of VP of Strategic Development, which in practice meant she attended a lot of meetings and used the phrase organizational agility without irony. The text said, "Can you wrap up whatever you're working on? Dad wants the conference room at 8. I figured it was a budget cycle review. Maybe a federal contract renewal I needed to brief the team on." I showed up with my coffee thermos and my laptop, still in the same shirt I'd had on since the night before. Gerald Whitfield was already seated at the head of the table. Nadine sat to his right in a blazer that probably cost more than my truck payment. Sylvia Hartman from operations was there too, but she was studying the table like it owed her money. That's when I understood what kind of meeting this was. Gerald didn't waste time. He's not a man who enjoys discomfort, so he gets through it fast. He slid the folder across to me and said that 21 years was a good run, that CoreFlow needed to evolve, and that Nadine was going to lead the company into its next chapter. He used the word modernize 3 times. He didn't use the word thank you once. Nadine gave me a small nod, measured, professional, like she was being gracious about something that had nothing to do with her. I picked up the folder, read the termination notice, looked at the date that morning. HR had already signed it before I walked in the room. I signed where they needed me to sign. I didn't make a speech, partly because I was running on 2 hours of sleep, partly because I already knew something they didn't. What Gerald Whitfield had forgotten, what nobody in that room remembered, was a clause he himself had written into our licensing framework back in 2003, the year CoreFlow signed its first major operator agreement. Gerald was paranoid back then about competitors reverse engineering our safety protocols, so he insisted that every licensing agreement include an authorization lock. If the lead safety engineer ever left the company without filing a formal transition sign-off, the operational licenses attached to our 31 proprietary protocols would automatically suspend on the next weekly verification cycle. Every Monday at 6 a.m., the system checked credentials. It had been doing it for 21 years without incident, because I had never left. I left on a Tuesday. I drove home as Houston was waking up, stopped at a gas station on the 610 loop, and sat in my truck eating a breakfast sandwich that tasted like nothing. Called my son Philip. He was a second-year engineering student at Texas A&M, and it was early, but he picked up. "Hey Dad, you okay?" "Yeah." "I just got fired." Silence. Then, seriously? "Yep. After everything you built there?" I told him not to worry, that I'd explain later. He said okay, but I could hear it in his voice, that particular mix of anger and confusion that I recognized from when he was 16 and the world wasn't making sense to him. We hadn't been close in a few years. His mother Lorraine and I split 5 years ago, and I'd spent most of his teenage years being the dad who canceled plans because a pipeline somewhere needed attention. He deserved better than that. I knew it. I just didn't know how to fix it from inside that job. Back home, I made real coffee and sat by the kitchen window watching the neighborhood come alive. Garbage trucks, dog walkers. A guy 2 houses down scraping ice off his windshield, even though it wasn't that cold. Normal Tuesday. I thought about the 340 miles of pipeline that my credentials were currently authorizing. 11 regional operators running product through systems I had designed, tested, and maintained for 2 decades. 2 federal contracts covering natural gas infrastructure across 3 states. And 1 verification cycle, 6 days away, that nobody at CoreFlow had thought to ask me about before they handed me that folder. I didn't do anything to cause what was coming. I just didn't stop it. Monday morning came quietly. I woke up at 5:30 out of habit, the same way I'd been waking up for 2 decades. No alerts on my phone, no field crews waiting on a call. Just coffee and the sound of the neighborhood outside my window. For the first time in 21 years, I had nowhere to be by 7 a.m. I was on my second cup when the text started. 6 to 23 a.m. Randall Owens, my old technical lead. Walter, something's wrong with the verification system. Operators are getting lockout errors. Do you know anything about this? 6:31 a.m., a number I recognized from Frontier Gas, one of our regional operators. Protocol authorization failed on our end. System is asking for lead engineer credentials. Who do we contact? By 7 a.m., I had 11 messages. By 7:45, I had 19. All of them variations of the same thing. Authorization suspended. Credentials expired. Original lead engineer sign-off required to restore operations. I read every one of them. Then I poured a third cup of coffee and sat back down. 7 of CoreFlow's 11 regional operators had suspended activity on licensed pipeline segments by 9 a.m. That's not a glitch. That's 200 miles of product flow sitting idle while operators tried to figure out who to call. The answer, according to the licensing agreement Gerald Whitfield had written in 2003, was me. Not CoreFlow's legal team. Not the new VP of Strategic Development. Me personally, as the named lead safety engineer on every single one of those agreements. I let the calls go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk, and honestly, I wasn't sure what I'd say if I did. I hadn't caused this. I just stopped being the person who quietly prevented it every week without anyone noticing. That was the part nobody understood until now. Those verification cycles had been running every Monday at 6 a.m. for years. Every week, my credentials renewed the operational licenses automatically. Nobody at CoreFlow had ever seen it happen because it always worked. It only became visible the first time it didn't. The first headline appeared on an energy industry wire service around 11 a.m. CoreFlow Energy Systems reports widespread authorization failures across regional pipeline network. By noon, it had been picked up by the Houston Chronicle and 2 trade publications. LinkedIn was moving fast. Engineers and operators who worked in the sector were already asking questions in the comments. People who knew the industry knew that this kind of failure didn't happen by accident. It happened when something fundamental changed in the licensing structure, and the people who followed CoreFlow knew exactly what had changed 4 days earlier. Sylvia Hartman called me at 11:40. I let it go. Randall tried twice more. I let those go too. What I didn't let go was a call from a field supervisor named Pete, a guy I'd worked alongside for 9 years on the Louisiana corridor. He didn't leave a voicemail. He texted instead, "Hope you're doing okay, Walter. This place doesn't know what it just did." I wrote back, "I know. Stay safe out there." That was the only response I sent all day. Tuesday afternoon, CoreFlow's communications team put Nadine in front of cameras. I found out through a LinkedIn notification that she had scheduled an emergency press conference, and I watched it on my laptop from my back porch with a glass of iced tea. She looked composed, prepared. She'd clearly spent Monday night with a PR team drilling her on talking points. She called the failures temporary integration challenges during a planned leadership transition, and said CoreFlow's technical team was working around the clock to restore full operational continuity. A reporter from the Houston Chronicle raised her hand before Nadine even finished the sentence. "Ms. Whitfield, industry sources are telling us that these authorization failures are directly tied to the termination of Walter Grady, your former lead safety engineer, and specifically to licensing clauses that require his personal sign-off to maintain operational status. Can you address that?" The pause was small, maybe 2 seconds, but I saw it. Walter Grady represented a legacy approach to pipeline engineering, Nadine said. CoreFlow has made a strategic decision to move beyond that model. We're building a modernized, digitally integrated safety framework, and we're confident our team has the expertise to resolve these transitional issues quickly. The reporter followed up. Can you be specific about the timeline for resolution? We're not in a position to give a specific timeline at this point. Another voice from the back of the room. Has CoreFlow been in contact with Mr. Grady since his termination? Nadine said that was not information she could share. The clip was on LinkedIn within 40 minutes of the press conference ending. By evening, it had been viewed over 180,000 times in the energy and pipeline engineering community. The response was not what CoreFlow's PR team had prepared for. Floyd Navarro, A pipeline safety consultant I'd mentored years back before he went independent, posted something that got shared over 400 times. Called it a legacy approach, while her licensed operators are sitting idle waiting for the legacy guys sign off. I've worked in this industry for 22 years. Walter Grady didn't build legacy systems. He built systems that protected people. There's a difference. A safety director from a Gulf Coast operator wrote, "I've been on 3 federal audits where Walter Grady's protocols were the reason we passed. Calling his work outdated is like calling load-bearing walls optional." Nadine's press conference had been meant to project control. Instead, it handed the industry a clip to rally around. By Wednesday morning, her name was attached to the failure in a way that a better communications team might have helped her avoid. But there wasn't a PR firm in Houston that could fix the underlying problem, and the underlying problem had nothing to do with messaging. Wednesday brought the federal piece. PHMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, issued a formal notice of investigation into CoreFlow's authorization lapse on 2 federal contracts. Those contracts covered natural gas infrastructure across parts of Texas and Oklahoma, and the federal government did not use words like transitional challenges when pipeline safety protocols went dark without explanation. They used words like administrative freeze and pending compliance review. CoreFlow's stock dropped 22% on Wednesday alone. Over 4 trading days, it was down 38%. The board called an emergency session for Thursday morning. I knew this not because anyone told me, but because that's what boards do when a company starts bleeding that fast. Gerald called me Thursday afternoon, 2 hours after the board meeting ended. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. Not to be dramatic. I just needed a moment to decide what kind of conversation this was going to be. Walter. His voice was different. Quieter, the boardroom confidence was gone. Gerald. I think we need to sit down and talk through this situation. There's a path forward here that works for everyone. It's not a situation, I said. A situation is when something unexpected goes wrong. This is a consequence. There's a difference. Silence on his end. I could hear someone talking in the background, muffled, like he had his hand partially over the phone. Walter, I understand you're angry. That's fair. But I need you to understand that there are 340 employees at CoreFlow who had nothing to do with this decision. Good people, people with families. I know exactly who those people are, Gerald. I worked alongside most of them for 2 decades. You should have thought about them before you handed critical safety operations to someone who has never spent a night in the field. Another pause, longer this time. What would it take, he asked, to resolve this? Name it. Compensation, equity stake, a consulting arrangement, whatever makes sense. We can make this right financially. And there it was. The moment I had been waiting for, though. I hadn't known I was waiting for it until I heard the words out loud. 21 years of missed dinners, canceled weekends, a marriage that quietly ran out of road, and his answer was to ask me what number would make it go away. You can't buy back trust, Gerald. That's the part you keep missing. This was never about money. I wasn't underpaid. I wasn't overlooked for promotions. I gave that company everything I had because I believed in the work. And you ended it with a folder on a conference table that HR had already signed before I walked in the room. Walter, your daughter stood in front of cameras and called my life's work a legacy approach. On the record, in front of the whole industry, so no, there's no number. More background noise on his end. Someone was talking to him urgently. The board probably, or legal. Then what do you want? The patience in his voice was thinning now. The real Gerald coming back through. One thing, CoreFlow issues a formal written statement to the industry acknowledging that the termination was mishandled and that my work was foundational to the company's safety record. Not a legal settlement with a non-disclosure clause attached. A public statement. In writing. That's not something I can agree to unilaterally. Then take it to the board. You just came from there. He didn't respond right away. I could hear him breathing. A man who had built a company from nothing, now sitting in the wreckage of a decision he made in about 45 minutes without reading the paperwork. I'll bring it to them, he said finally. You do that. I hung up. Friday afternoon at 4:22 p.m., CoreFlow's board released a formal statement. It was careful language, drafted by people who get paid to make admissions sound like anything but admissions, but it was there in black and white. The leadership transition had not followed proper authorization procedures, and Walter Grady's contributions to CoreFlow's safety infrastructure were foundational to the company's operational record. Gerald resigned effective immediately. The statement described it as a mutual decision to allow new leadership to guide Coreflow's recovery. In practice, it meant the board had run out of patience with the man who created the problem and then failed to solve it. Nadine lasted 11 days in her new role before quietly stepping down. Her LinkedIn went dark after that. I heard through Floyd that she had moved back to Philadelphia, where her mother's family was from. Over the following months, Apex Pipeline, Coreflow's largest regional competitor, acquired the company for $89 million. Before my termination, Coreflow had been valued at just over $290 million. The federal freeze had made two of its most valuable contracts untransferable without regulatory clearance, which took 14 weeks to work through. By the time Apex completed due diligence, Coreflow's negotiating position was gone. They took what they could get. I won't pretend I felt nothing when I read the acquisition announcement, but it wasn't satisfaction exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when a structure you knew was compromised finally shows the damage. You're not glad it happened, you just knew it was going to. About 3 weeks after Nadine left Coreflow, I got an email from her. No subject line, 4 sentences. She said she had been going through some of the protocol documentation and wanted to understand why the regional operators trusted the systems so completely. She asked if I would be willing to point her toward anything foundational. I thought about it for a day. I wasn't sure if it was genuine or if it was some kind of angle I wasn't seeing. But I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be on the other side of all this, and I sent her one document, a technical report I had written in 2007 after a near miss on a segment in Louisiana. 40 pages of root cause analysis, field observations, and protocol redesign. No note attached, just the report. I don't know what she did with it. I didn't follow up. But I sent it because those protocols existed to protect people, and if she was seriously trying to understand that, the least I could do was not stand in the way. Director Beverly Caldwell from the National Pipeline Safety Consortium called me 6 weeks after the acquisition closed. She said her organization had been watching the Coreflow situation carefully, and what it had demonstrated to them was the kind of institutional knowledge they needed at the leadership level. The offer was $210,000 in base salary, 25% performance bonus, and a team operating across 19 countries. I accepted the same afternoon. My office is on the 28th floor of a building in downtown Houston. From the window I can see the ship channel tankers moving slow in the morning haze, tugs working the turns. Some days I sit there with my coffee before the team arrives and think about that Monday at 6:23 a.m. when Randall's first text came through. How I was sitting in my kitchen in the same shirt I'd worn to my own termination, watching 21 years of work do exactly what I designed it to do. Protect people, even after I left the room. The National Pipeline Safety Consortium gave me resources I never had at Coreflow, a team of 47 engineers across 6 time zones, a direct line to federal regulators in 3 countries. The kind of budget that meant when we identified a safety gap, we could actually close it instead of writing a memo and waiting 6 months for approval. The work was the same work I had always done. It just finally had the infrastructure around it that it deserved. 3 months into the job, I got an email from Lorraine. We don't talk often. The divorce wasn't ugly, but it left a distance that neither of us has fully bridged, and I think we both accepted that some distances just stay. Her email was short. She said Philip had been telling her about my new position, said she was proud of me, said he was talking about me differently now, and that she thought I should know that. I read it twice, then closed my laptop and sat with it for a while. Philip drove down from College Station on a Saturday in November. I took him up to see the office. He's a quiet kid, always has been, so he didn't say much while he walked around. He read the framed citations on the walls. A commendation from PHMSA dated 2019 that I had never bothered to hang at Coreflow. A letter from a county emergency management office in Louisiana thanking the Coreflow team for the 2017 protocol redesign that prevented what their engineers believed would have been a significant environmental incident. I'd forgotten that letter was even in a box somewhere. My assistant had framed it without asking. Philip stood at the window for a long time looking out at the channel. "Dad," he said, without turning around, "I think I've had the wrong picture of what you do." I told him it was a hard job to explain from the outside. No, I mean, I always thought it was technical, like systems and numbers and compliance paperwork. I didn't understand that it was about people. He turned around then. "That letter from Louisiana, those were real people in those towns." "Yeah," I said. "They were. And nobody knew it was you. That's usually how it works when things go right. He nodded slowly, the way he does when something is settling into place for him. He picked up the PHMSA commendation and looked at the date. I've been thinking about switching to safety engineering, he said. Not because of what happened with core flow. I want to be clear about that. It's because I finally understand what the work actually is. I didn't push him. I told him to think it through, make sure it was what he wanted, and not just a reaction to a few months of news. He said he'd been thinking about it since before the core flow story broke, that something about the way I talked about the Louisiana corridor during one of our calls had stuck with him. I didn't remember that conversation, but he did. After he left, I sat in my truck in the parking garage longer than I needed to. Not thinking about core flow or Gerald or any of it. Just sitting with the fact that my son had driven 3 hours on a Saturday to see where his father worked. That he had read those letters on the wall and understood what they meant. That somewhere in the last year, without me engineering it or forcing it, the distance between us had gotten smaller. Lorraine was right. He was talking about me differently because he finally saw me differently, not as the dad who missed things. As someone who had spent 21 years doing work that mattered in the dark without asking for recognition, that was worth more than the $210,000 salary, more than the acquisition headlines, more than watching Gerald's statement get posted and reposted across every pipeline engineering forum in the country. 6 months after the Apex acquisition closed, I was brought in as a paid consultant to help rebuild CoreFlow's client relationships under the new ownership. The work wasn't about settling scores. It was about making sure the operators who had been caught in the middle of something they didn't cause could get back to running their systems safely. That's what the job has always been. Gerald, from what I hear, retired to a property outside San Antonio. I don't know if he raises cattle or just sits on a porch. I don't have any anger left for him. He made a bad call, the way people do when they get comfortable and stop reading the details. The details always matter. I spent 21 years proving that. Some things don't expire. If any part of this story felt familiar, if you've sat in a meeting where your experience was called a liability, where someone half your age used words like modernize and legacy, like they were insults, then you already know what I'm talking about. Here's what I know after 54 years. The work speaks, not immediately, not loudly, but it speaks. And the people who built things that actually hold up don't need anyone's permission to know what they're worth. You don't get even. You get out from under people who never deserved your best years, and then you go do the best work of your life somewhere that understands what it's getting. That's not revenge. That's just knowing the difference between a chapter and the whole story.